this is a focus demo, ideally showing you the process of getting to the materials for the building and a little bit about 3ds Max. It divides things up in kind of a, well, it's organized to them, but when you're new to it, it seems a little bit over the top because they're breaking out scenes from scene assets. So what you see in the window above my head here is that where we get our starting point for the tutorials, just right above my head here, we also can see we're in a subfolder called scenes. Now I'm going to go back in the file structure here. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to click on the word next to scenes to get back to its holding place. Right above the word scenes here, we see scene assets and then material libraries. A material library, and if I open this up, you can see them. They end in, I believe they end in .mat for material, but for some reason the association on my computer thinks that's a Microsoft Access. That's incorrect, so don't worry about that right there. What you can do now is I'm going to copy this new path by clicking up here, and I just want to get a copy of it. So when it's highlighted, I can just right click and say copy. Very handy way to get from one path into a different tool. To add this material library, and this is the key, I'm going to go back into 3ds Max, and I'm going to open the Slate Material Editor by touching M on the keyboard. There it is. So one of the things you'll notice on the left in this interface I haven't spent a lot of time talking about in the past is that we've got an option to add a material library. Now these can open and close by using the minus and plus. If I close this material area and the maps area and the controllers and the Autodesk, it's very possible that the one you're looking for is already in here. But the point of this is to show you how to add one. And so this looks to me like an eject button on an old CD drawer. It's like a little diamond coming down. And when we get in here, we can go to Open Material Library. That's the key feature we want to get to. Now the path that I copied is now going to be put into this box down here where it says, what's the file name? I'm going to do a paste. And when I click on the open over here, I can see a number of them. I can sort them. I can open them up. I'm going to see if I can open more than one here. I'm just going to open the first one for architectural. Door, rails, stairs, wall, window. That doesn't appear to be them, so I'm going to open another material library. Luckily, I still have that path in here. I'm going to paste it in here. Let's see. Civil view vehicles. If these aren't the ones, then we'll have to kind of take it further. Okay, so you guys are struggling with the render. Let's take a look here if the Windows is a multi-sub object. If I pull one out here, there's some windows. I don't know if this is the one we need or not. Let's take a look at our tutorial on the materials and see if that's the one. Materials not supported, missing material, and approximation will be used. It's because I'm using the art render, I believe. Notice I'm using the art render. So I'm going to close out of these error messages in the render settings up here. Remember we used the art render yesterday. So now I'm going to get in here and change this to a different one. Let's just use a simple scanline render. I'm going to change this to camera, if there is one. I hope there is. They don't have a camera in here. That could be something that we could improve upon. We could add a camera in here for a viewport. So with it set to scanline in production, I'll just take my current version of front and do a render on it. It's just a black box. I see. It's trying to use a ray tracing engine. Let me clear that out. And this is probably what you're looking at, which is not helping us at all. All right, I'm going to step out for a minute from this view. I'm going to touch P on my keyboard to go to perspective. I'm going to make sure that my building and my glazing are both visible. And I'm going to add a camera in here by going to the add cameras. Rather than using a physical, which we did yesterday, I'm going to grab a target one. Make sure I'm locked on a left viewport here, and so I can get the front of the building. My first click creates the target camera. The second click, I'm going to put just past my object. And what I want to see is that my building actually is encompassed in the cone of influence. Now the cameras, briefly, you can make it a little bit wider. Go to the modify panel on it, and I can make it a little bit wider or a little bit more zoomed in. That's like a sniper scope almost. It's a very wide angle. So I'm just playing with that cone to get the right size there. Didn't realize time was up. Make sure you turn in something with what you got. And I'm going to try to change this viewport to camera. And we'll see if I can get a render from here. I will make sure I publish this out to the YouTube channel once I get it figured out. Thanks for your patience and understanding, students. It's a newer version, so I got to work out some idiosyncrasies, but we'll get it. All right. Somebody said they got an error here. Okay, yep. There's a question on the Google Classroom for you, Gabriel, to help you with that error message about setting your project up. So take a look at the question information on Google Classroom, and I'll pick up from there. Okay, so within the scene, we're looking now at two buildings. I'm going to stop the current render, and I want to point out a couple of things that we did. What we did is we realized that the existing scene had something called daylight. And once upon a time, when using daylight, you used a different process for rendering. So for this to work in the version we've got now, we're gonna stop using the daylight. I did briefly show people how a daylight, when it's in the scene, can be set to a particular date and time. It's got its use, but it's causing some complexities with our render engine. So if I reactivate the daylight and I click on it and look at its properties here under modify, we talked about how you can set the date, time, and location right above me here. For example, we set it to, well, right now it's set back to June 21st, 2019, and you can tell it where you are. So if you change this, for example, to Chicago and make it December 1st, it's close enough, you'll notice the sun starts to drop in the sky, because as you move into December, that's when our sun is lower in the sky. So hopefully you're appreciating the fact that it can actually calculate where the sun should be in the sky. But that being said, we're not going to do that in this version. We're just going to change and build on what we did yesterday. We're going to use the art renderer. So as a review of what we did yesterday, on our render setup dialog, let me get rid of a couple of these things so they're out of the way. On our render settings dialog, which we're going to click on the one with teapot with the gear, we're going to change our rendering so that it's an iterative rendering mode, and we're going to make this so it's using the art render. And then on the art render, I don't think you're going to want to go beyond high because it's going to take too long. And you can actually, by the way, say I want you to stop it after a certain amount of time. So if you wanted to limit this to how good can I go in 5 minutes, you can do so. All right, so that'll save some of you. Now, if I did a render right now, you're going to appreciate a couple of differences. I've applied physical materials on the first tower here. So when I render this out, and because it's iterative, we're going to start to see some details here. You'll notice the building that's been done here has had physical materials applied to it. I just use the pre-builts. For the glazing, I put like matte plastic. The metal shell, I put a reflective metal. And for the mullions, which is mounted to the glass, I put block glass on it. The ground doesn't have anything on it. And the tower is the second building. So if I click on tower now, tower is the second one done with the Boolean operation. It does not have a physical material on it yet. So I'm going to close the render window here. And I'm going to touch M to go into the material editor. And I'm going to use this second building here as a demonstration of what happens when you apply now a physical material to it. So again, picking up on the concepts we did yesterday, we're going to come in here and you can look for physical material if you want to. Here. And if I got a physical material, I can make sure I've got it selected. You see the dotted lines around this? That's to kind of indicate I've got it selected. With it selected, I'm going to change the name here to something like Building 2, so I know what it is. And then I'm going to pick a preset for what I want this building to look like. So masonry. Just going to take the default. I'm going to take the output node and click and drag it to my selection, which doesn't seem to make much of a difference right now. I know I can do a lot with the tiling on this. In fact, I'm going to focus on this object itself. I'm in a camera viewport. In order to do that, I need to touch P to get in perspective. I'm going to click on just the selection here. Now that I'm zoomed in on it, I'm going to render this view, which is a perspective view. So if I do a render, just to focus on this building, I'm going to change this from changes to perspective. It's giving me some messages that it's got some missing materials. Well, with missing materials, it's going to look black like an alpha channel. So let me grab a different physical material to start here. Let me get into polished copper. That'd be cool to have a polished copper building. All right. This is the demo gremlin at its worst. You should always show PowerPoint if you're trying to show how to do something, because PowerPoint, you know, if it crashes, it's obvious you're not doing anything wrong. Let's try this version. Patterned, yeah. Oh, I just changed physical glass. I just changed the wrong one. That's why it's not showing any differences. Solid geometry, that's the one that stays there. Here's building 2 with it highlighted. And the red lines are probably telling me that there's a connection issue. Let's see here. Polished copper. Try to render that. There it is. There's a polished copper building. And if I change my preset here, if I change my viewport to be camera, I can render from the camera and then get both buildings with physical materials using the art renderer, limiting my time to 5 minutes. So I wanted you to do these 2 buildings and then add a third and put your name in there. Whatever you get done today, make sure you show me with a snipping tool and or a render and highlight what it looks like. It's also great to put your name in there. So let's figure out how to put our name in there briefly just to demonstrate the process. All right. I'm just going to add a spline of text. And this is in meters. I think my building, based on my building size, 2.5 meters tall is probably fine. And I'll just call it, let's say this is Student, this is Dentville. It's in the scene. I can orbit it so that it becomes a little more visible. And of course, so that it shows up in the render, I need to give it some depth. So on the Modify panel, I'm going to add something like bevel. A little bit of depth here. And I'll add a material to it. Now, just for simplicity, I'm going to put the copper on that one as well. Make sure it's in my camera. It's not. So I'm going to go back and select my text. Use the Move tool to move it so that it is in the scene. And if I need to, I can scale it up. And do a render from there. And there's my name, Dentville. The city of dents with a dented building done by student. All right, get what you can get done. Use me interactively as you're going through it, and I'll help guide you. I'm going to stop this demo. Summary. I should learn to do a summary. In summary, what we did in the completed version of our buildings is we switched the render engine so that we're using the art render, which we practiced on Monday, and we switched over to physical materials. And on the environment map, we deselected something right here that said mental ray, sky and sun, or physical sky. I can't remember which one it was. And we just clicked here and used a gradient. And that combination worked for a render. With a camera in it, kind of helped control where we're at. There it is. It's got physical materials on it. It's using the art render engine. It's got the name in it, and it shows the work that was done in the allotted time. Thanks for your attention.